Tonight on News 5 Live, there is a second confirmed case of COVID-19 on San Pedro. The mother of the 38-year-old woman has tested positive for the virus. Prime Minister Barrow says no national lockdown as yet. Lord Ashcroft donates $10 million to combat COVID-19, and there is a relief package for COVID-19 victims. A first cohort of Cuban medical team arrives in Belize. Senators say that the government will need to redo the budget given the economic effects of COVID-19. And the Michael Finnegan market remains open amid the COVID-19 threat. We'll tell you what the vendors are saying. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
In life,
evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, March 25th. I am Marlene Cuellar. Tonight, there is a second case of the highly contagious coronavirus. The second case is the mother of the 38-year-old resident of the San Pedrito area of San Pedro. The announcement was made today that within 3 days of the first case, there is now another person carrying the virus. The first carrier, who is the San Pedro woman, arrived at the PGIA in Belize last Thursday from Los Angeles, California, and took a Maya Island air flight to the island along with 12 other persons. The individual was told to self-isolate, but apparently that did not happen. The silver lining is that family members and others who she came in contact with have been tested and the results are negative. The PM spoke about the new case in San Pedro, which remains under lockdown.
The first confirmed case infected one of her family members, indeed her mother. There were other family members that were screened and sampled and tested. They all were negative. And there were 5 additional persons in San Pedro tested, not related to the first case at all, but who it appeared might have been exhibiting symptoms that warranted their being tested, all negative. So the second case is what was to have been feared in circumstances such as occurred. The mapping exercise in San Pedro has proceeded. We can't say that it's done. The health professionals will have to see if there is additional mapping required in consequence of the mother of the first infected person now having tested positive. The batch of tests done by the Ministry of Health included 12, as I said, from San Pedro, but also included 4 other tests from persons coming from different parts of the country. I don't want to say exactly from which communities, which districts those persons were sampled and tested. But I can say that not one of the persons tested, apart from those in San Pedro, where, as I said, there was the one case of the mother testing positive, nobody else from elsewhere in the country has tested positive.
San Pedro remains under lockdown tonight as San Pedranos observe a state of emergency imposed since Monday following the announcement of the first case of the virus. Generally, the streets have been empty as residents stay at home and tourism activities have come to a grinding halt. Those who travel to the island to work have had to remain there as domestic travel by airline and water taxis are suspended. The normally booming tourist destination is one of the hardest hit and has suffered from cancellations in hotels as well as cruise ship visitors. At this afternoon's press conference, the PM also announced that due to the second case of COVID-19, San Pedro will remain under a state of emergency for another 30 days.
We are going to be extending the state of emergency that we declared for Ambergris Caye. So that is going to be extended so that we don't have to keep going back to the Governor General, or worse, having to convoke the National Assembly. The new proclamation will extend it for a total of 30 days with the very earnest hope that it can be lifted well before then. But we just, out of an abundance of caution, and as I said, so that we don't have to keep going back to His Excellency, we are putting in the 30-day period as a sort of fail-safe. But we clearly have not only the hope, but the expectation that it will be lifted before 30 days.
Prior to this afternoon's press conference, there had been persistent hearsay on social media that the Prime Minister would be bringing into effect a countrywide lockdown in an attempt to mitigate the possible spread of the coronavirus in Belize. At the start of that media briefing, PM Barrow made it clear to the nation that there will not be an immediate shutdown amid the ongoing crisis brought about by COVID-19. He admitted that while it is foreseeable that another state of emergency may be declared, banks and other financial institutions, as well as grocery stores and pharmacies, will remain open.
We are not announcing a national shutdown. We are not announcing the declaration of a state of emergency. So I want to make clear to the people of this country that it may yet come to that. If it does, we will give some notice. And in any event, since that is at the very least a possibility, and I would go so far as to say a likelihood, depending on how things evolve, I need to make clear right at the start that if we got to that point, it would not mean that every last little thing would be locked down. There would be no need for people to rush the supermarkets. There would be no need for any run on the banks. Financial institutions, supermarkets, grocery stores, all those things would remain open.
According to Barrow, should a countrywide state of emergency become imminent, citizens must not panic. In the case of such eventuality, the Prime Minister says that the National Task Force, the second arm of government's response to the COVID-19 crisis, is already putting together a plan of action that will be implemented to ensure that Belizeans remain safe indoors. The PM also assured that there is food security.
People will be asked to stay in place as much as possible. Go out and do what you have to do with respect to your essential needs, and then return home, because that is the best way in which to be safe. But please, if we reach that point, there is not going to be any need to panic. The essentials of life will have to continue, and the National Task Force is in fact coming up with the roadmap as to how the logistics will operate in the context of a national shutdown. So let me stress that if we reach that point, please do not panic, and please be assured that with respect to the essentials, life will continue in as normal a way as possible. To repeat again, supermarkets, pharmacies, banks would remain open. Of course, they would be required to follow the protocols of minimizing close contact between persons. And again, just as we actively discourage price gouging, so should consumers not act selfishly and buy large quantities of products.
As the nation braces for a crisis provoked by COVID-19, several measures were announced today at a press conference by the National Oversight Committee to ease the pain on Belizeans and quell uncertainty caused by the threat of the spread of the virus. Financial expert Dr. Carla Barnett, one of the two economic czars on the National Oversight Committee, the other being attorney Chris Coy, outlined the dire economic situation that Belize now finds itself in regarding COVID-19. While great emphasis has been placed on the tourism sector, Dr. Barnett points out that the consequences of the rapid economic downturn are far-reaching, affecting all industries. According to The Economist, as much as 80% of workers in the hospitality industry, particularly hotels, are being laid off.
The situation in the economy is catastrophic, is what we describe it as. Catastrophic because it is not only the tourism sector, it is the allied sectors, everybody that contributes to tourism, and that's a really large sector of the economy that we're talking about. The information that we have suggests that we're talking about upwards of 80% of the employees in the hotel sector that are losing their jobs. That's 80% of about 14,000 people. All of the tour guides, that's 100% of about 2,800, between 2,500 to 3,000 people. We've also had significant job losses at the borders in the free zones as a result of the shutdown. We've had significant impact on the productive sector, those people, the farmers who provide to the hotel and restaurants that serve the tourism visitors. And so the impact is going to be quite large.
Belize's economic performance in light of the existing crisis is very poor, and it will take months for the country to rebound from the doldrums of COVID-19. Gross domestic product, or GDP, will undoubtedly plummet as a result of the massive economic shock. Exacerbating an already dismal situation is the fact that many in the tourism industry who are tonight jobless will only be receiving a very small percentage of what they were making during the peak season. Dr. Carla Barnett informed during this afternoon's press conference that on average, laid-off employees will only be receiving $150 weekly.
So that's in a nutshell where we are. What does this mean in terms of GDP growth? We don't know yet. We just know that it's bad. We know that it is at least a minus 4% on the GDP. We're talking about a decline of about 4%. Could be as high as 10%, depending on how long and how deep this goes. We're talking about $450, $500 million loss in our foreign exchange earnings. That's the reality, and I'm putting all these numbers out there because I want people to understand that it is a very difficult situation. Sometimes I hear people say, why are we worrying about the money? We need to worry about the people who are going to get sick. Well, we need the money to address the issues across, including first and foremost dealing with the health situation. So we have to look at how the economy is going to be recovering from this. Now, let me talk a little bit about how the relief for employees, for people who have lost their jobs, how that is going to work. Chris and I have come up with a series of recommendations that are intended to ensure that the system is fair, that the system is equitable, that those who need to benefit from it can have quick, easy, convenient access, that those who ought not to benefit cannot get what they're not to get out of it. And therefore, what we're seeking to do at this stage, it looks like it will be $150 every 2 weeks. It's not a lot of money. We're not seeking, we cannot replace people's incomes, but we can help to relieve the stress in terms of meeting basic necessities.
Lord Michael Ashcroft, who has been in Belize for 2 weeks, made a significant announcement today as the country braces for the spread of COVID-19. Lord Ashcroft is making a very generous donation for the benefit of Belizeans. He's contributing $10 million to be used towards the combat of the virus. From what we know, it is the single biggest donation to be made locally at this very critical time when many have been sent home and are jobless and face uncertainty as to how long it will take for the economy to rebound. Since the announcement, many Belizeans have applauded the generous gesture on social media. The brief statement reads, quote, "Having spent the last 2 weeks in the country and personally witnessing its impact on the overall economy of Belize and the lives of ordinary Belizeans, Lord Michael Ashcroft has agreed to contribute Belize $10 million to the national effort to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. This sum will be deposited with the Belize Bank, who will be the custodian of the funds to be dispersed on behalf of Lord Ashcroft. Lord Ashcroft has spoken to the Prime Minister and advised him of his donation," unquote. At his press conference this afternoon, the PM acknowledged the contribution.
$1 million donation that has been or is being gifted to us by Lord Ashcroft. I tried to find out how this would work, and he indicated that it would be run through his Belize Bank. It would not come into the Consolidated Revenue Fund. A committee would be set up to oversee the disbursement of the money, which would go principally, as I understand it, to the Ministry of Health in order to help to pay for the personal protective equipment, for the testing kits, and for the compensation package that we're trying to augment with respect to these all-important people.
During his presentation today, PM Barrow also spoke about the contributions made by the utility companies. On Tuesday, BEL said its hands are tied when it comes to the cancellation of bills or reduced rates for everyone in Belize. The company committed to reviewing case by case for those directly affected by the threat of COVID-19. Today, Barrow outlined the monetary and in-kind contributions from BWSL, BEL, and BTL. He noted that the government will still be making a request for additional support from BEL.
BWSL agreed this morning, upon the request of government, their board of directors, to offer the following relief: a one-off $1 million contribution to the government to be disbursed upon request. So again, it makes the point that we are going to have, we already have, and will continue to have enough cash in hand to take care of our healthcare workers and to purchase the equipment required in the course of the struggle. So a one-off $1 million contribution to the government, 25% reduction in water rates to residential customers who consume less than 3,000 gallons per month. Again, this is upon the request of the government. That would work out to 35,234 customers, being 65% of the residential customers. So 65% of all residential customers will benefit from this 25% reduction. This, in the first instance, is for the months of March, April, and May, with the possibility of a further extension should the circumstances warrant. In terms of BL, now you know that they had already pledged $1 million. They had their own press conference. If they don't collect money, then they can't pay for the supply of electricity. They must cover the cost of power, which they don't themselves generate. But nevertheless, we've asked them to relook at their position, which would probably mean that government would then itself have to subsidize the payment of these bills. BTL is describing their relief as amounting to in excess of $7 million, but here's how it's broken down. Again, a cash contribution of $1 million to the COVID-19 Relief Fund, to $1.7 million of worth of discounts on prepaid top-up to allow families to keep in contact with each other, and they're in the process of providing that now. And then a $0.6 million increase in bandwidth to enable Belizeans to work and study from home. I think they've already started to provide that. And they're pledging a further $2 million in free prepaid top-up to allow, again, for people to be able to communicate during this crisis.
We'll have more from today's press conference later in the newscast. Coming up, the leader of the opposition asks for calm as the country braces for the spread of COVID-19. And we go to the local market, where vendors are ensuring the supply of fruits and veggies. The leader of the opposition, who is the co-chair of the Oversight Committee, joined the Prime Minister at a press conference this afternoon. There have been numerous reports of property owners evicting tenants during this worrying time. Many have lost their jobs as the economy continues to reel from the COVID-19 crisis. Opposition leader John Brisenia calls on all landlords to have a heart given the unfortunate circumstance, aside from the fact that it is unlawful to summarily evict a tenant for failure to pay rent without due notice.
The issue of rent, landlords. There are a lot of landlords that are kicking people out of their rooms because they can't pay their rent. This is not, I find is not only illegal but immoral. That in a time of crisis, you are going to kick out especially poor people out of their home, out of the rooms that they are renting. And what some of these people are doing, they are cutting off the water and cutting off the electricity. I'm asking that in government, that if we could send the police to go after these people to ensure that they do not cut off their light, they do not cut off their water, and make we work out one payment plan with these people. That 3 months later, things they get back on track, that then these people could work out a payment plan. But we cannot allow these unscrupulous landlords, especially some of them that are in slums, and just rent their rooms and take advantage of poor people. We cannot allow that to happen. Prime Minister and I have spoken about it, and he agreed with me that we are going to do everything possible to ensure that they do not kick out anybody from their rooms. So I'm appealing especially to the people in San Pedro right now, that there are a lot of people now that would like to get out from San Pedro and go home, but cannot leave because of the lockdown, and they are not working and don't have money. Don't kick out these people. And the same thing is happening here in Belize City, in other places. People don't have work. Everything is starting to slowly shut down. Stores are closing down. Buses are not running, so people, even if they want to come to work, can't come to work. So it's just a natural progression. And we have to ensure that we do this in an orderly fashion. We are going to fight for you. And I'm not saying me personally, but with the Prime Minister and myself and the team, we are going to ensure that we protect you and to ensure that we can go through this together, and God willing, and with prayers and faith and hope and sticking you together, we are going to come through this crisis.
Government is stepping up efforts to raise public funds to aid Belizeans. And while it is now looking at an initial $125 million in financial relief, co-chair of the National Oversight Committee, John Brisenia, says it is still only a drop in the bucket.
Today, the Prime Minister outlined some of the economic steps that we are taking at this time. And I want to assure Belizeans that it does not end here. We just tell you right now, we're going step by step. I wish you could get up here and tell you, well, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. As we progress, for instance, when we met at the first meeting, we had no idea about the $25 million. Then we spoke about the $25 million, and immediately we agreed that we could get the $25 million through the central bank. And then after the next meeting, now we found out now that we could get another $50 million. So the other $50 million that we're going to move around from the international partners, the loans that we have, that we expect to be told by CEO High, that we can move around. We're at 125. 125 is just a drop in the bucket, and we have to do more. And I see my job with as co-chair with the Prime Minister is to push as hard as we can and to look everywhere we can to be able to raise the necessary funds.
With prices for crude oil dropping on the international market, kerosene prices will go down at the pump at midnight tonight. The Ministry of Finance says the price for kerosene will decrease by $1.19 to now retail at $5.43 per gallon. Diesel went down this week to $8.25 per gallon. The prices for premium and regular gasoline remain the same at this point. Reports surfaced this morning that the Michael Finnegan Market was closing down. The information online suggested that vendors were all leaving at midday because the market would be shutting down. Well, the long and short of it is that the market is not being closed, but many vendors are closing their stalls and going home. We went out to the market this morning to find out more, and there we met vendors who were making preparations to close and others who say they will remain open for business. Here's that report.
Several stalls have closed down inside the Michael Finnegan Market in Belize City, and more are expected to follow in the days to come. The vendors have gone home because of the threat of the COVID-19. Today, when we stopped by, there was light foot traffic. Buyers were looking for fresh fruits and vegetables, but many of the baskets and boxes were already empty and shops and stalls locked up. For one vendor, Joel Castaneda, the access to fresh fruits and vegetables is a problem because farmers from out district are not coming to the city to sell anymore.
Farmers don't want to come to the city, and if they don't supply us, we cannot stand no more. So we will be selling what we have in shell, and whatsoever we have is when that's done, we just close down.
How do I manage now? When they close up, you don't know when they open back?
No, we don't have no idea. No, for our own safety, we prefer to stay home.
But I imagine it's rough still not be able to make your money.
Well, yeah, it's true, but then the government is not giving us no option. No, we talk to the city council, then the managers, them, and they don't give us no advice as what to do. So we are taking it on our own to close down.
How business look this morning? Are people rushing to buy last?
Saturday, from Saturday is hectic. From Saturday to now, it's very hectic. People are looking for stuff. Right now they are looking for carrots, they're looking for ginger, lime and orange, and there is nothing in the market. Everything finished.
We attempted to get some answers from the Belize City Council about what's being done to engage farmers who supply vendors inside and what measures are being put in place to ensure that crowds don't gather in the market. But the PR department declined an interview. They later sent out this notice to say that the market remains open on a, quote, day-to-day basis, end quote. One vendor says that he will keep his shop open because he serves customers he refers to as everyday buyers. And he says a closure will affect those consumers.
The reason why we are open is because the market itself is open. And we do not have that fear about this corona. All we need to do is take precautionary measures. Just stay your distance as well they request. Wear your mask, whoever want to wear their mask, and you carry on smartly. But the point is, now what we request, if the market closed, you have people it might affect bad because you have everyday buyers who don't have no refrigerator in their house. So automatically they save the lead token for buy each and every day. Because if they buy one bowl and save it up, the rat might go eat out their products so that they don't have nothing else for eat. So they can't get nothing else for feeding a picnic if they buy one large amount and stack it too. Because you got a lot of big rats who don't respect nothing. And that's one thing we have to watch too. So as long as they request this market for open, National Tree Chicken Shop are open. Booth number 18, Michael Finnegan Market.
Another vendor who plans to keep her shop open for as long as she's allowed to is Rosita Rivera of Indira's Spice Shop. She says that the past couple days were busy, but today things have slowed down.
I go in as full as the government said close down, I will close down. My people in Belize need me, and I'm here to serve them.
Now, are there any concerns for you as it relates to the virus? Any concerns, or what precautions are you taking here at your shop?
We are taking precaution. We are washing our hands, wearing our gloves, and also our masks. We have a lot of bitters we can help them from way back. We used to use it in the malaria days. We used to use a lot of sorosate, jackass bitters. We have a lot of things that could help the people in Belize. You know, we have this apple cider mixed with the cayenne pepper also, and the Belizean people are looking for the spices also to cook.
So people, what has business been like over the last couple of days or even today? Things busy, it's slow. How is it going for you?
From Saturday, we may have a hectic business. From today, it's going very slow. But we are here to serve the people of Belize.
If you're wondering where you'll get fresh meats, some meat vendors remain open inside the Michael Finnegan Market. Jun's Meat Shop was open for business today and says that they'll keep open to serve the public, but are mindful of the preventative measures.
we're not really close yet, right? We just serve people from outside, from the windows, just to protect for you oneself and things too. But the way how the market look right now, everything look dead. Not the sell, not the happen. So I don't know. Maybe might call off this. I don't know. We have with the minister or somebody else got for say or something. But it's up to them. We just have to protect for ourselves too.
How long do you plan to stay open?
Well, for my behalf, I mean, they said this is my last time I come in can work, but I don't know. If things get more serious, well, my safety first.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
To the break, the Senate approves a $25 million package to fight COVID-19.
When you see me on my phone,
A special sitting of the Senate took place today in Belmopan for senators on both sides of the aisle to approve the General Appropriations Bill 2020-2021. When it went to the House, there was no debate and the budget was expeditiously passed, including in the billion-dollar budget. Included in the billion-dollar budget for the new fiscal year is $25 million that has been earmarked for the tourism industry as a response to the devastating effects of COVID-19. The millions will go to the employees that are experiencing unemployment due to the closure of hotels, restaurants, resorts, and other stakeholders. This is the first tranche of the relief package, and it will be dispersed in the coming weeks. PUP Senators Isabel Bennett and Michelle Shabat weighed in on the context of the bill.
If we had a solid primary health care system, if investment was being placed under this particular aspect of the Ministry of Health, we would have such a much more solid foundation right now having to deal with COVID-19. My colleagues on the ground right now, nurses, doctors, pharmacists, would have as many protective personal gears that they need to actually attend to the issues right now. But we are giving $50,000 to primary health care services? I can't understand that. Hospitals services, under Cap 2 expenditure, 0. Cap 3 expenditure, 0. Community-based services, 0, 0, and actually the 0 was allotted from 2017-2018, again on page 103.
This budget, Mr. President, is far removed from the current reality and the necessities we face as a nation. We require a budget that is human-centered, accompanied by a financial rescue package. These are unprecedented times, and we need a budget that reflects these times. But not only must the budget focus on the current needs of our people, but it must display a clear plan to rebuild our economy once this pandemic has passed. For the past 12 years, the government has failed to make meaningful investment in the productive sector and apparently has no plan to change that course of action.
Social partner Senators Mark Lizarraga and Elena Smith, along with UDP Senator Dr. Carla Barnett, also shared their views on certain sections of the Prime Minister's budget. Senators are calling for a complete redo of the budget in light of COVID-19.
Let's talk a little bit about the economy and this economic hurricane that is about to make landfall. Mr. President, I stand to be corrected, but I think the IMF made funds available to the tune of $1 trillion or huge amount of money, if I'm not mistaken, from September for COVID. We watched this thing as it exploded in China. And certainly, Mr. President, by January of this year, those of us that were paying attention knew that this coronavirus was fast approaching a pandemic that could contribute to health, economic, and social crisis throughout the world. It is a shame, Mr. President, that we had sufficient notice to redraft for the new priorities that we need today. This budget could have been redrafted to reflect our needs, and it was not.
We are of the opinion that going forward, the whole budget needs to be retooled, and which we are certain will happen. Emergency supplementary reallocations must happen. Again, we've heard of some of those already being put in place. This includes retooling the recurrent expenditures and the Cap 2 and 3 expenditures. The focus must now be on immediate and short-term relief, as well as on recovery in the 2020-2021 fiscal year and beyond. Mr. President, we want to just quickly take a look, as we said before, the recovery efforts. We want to focus on relief efforts, which is the immediate need. The government has secured $25 million for relief measures in the first instance, as is reflected in the national budget. We understand that the Prime Minister will host a press conference today to share concrete information on the amounts identified and timelines to start distributing relief funds from the $25 million already secured.
This is a budget that we've all accepted has no meaning, because the basis on which the budget was prepared has changed totally with what has happened, or estimates of revenue have changed, or profile of expenditure has to change, and there are a range of social problems that we have to deal with arising from the situation that we're in.
Late this evening, a chartered flight arrived from Havana, Cuba, landed at the Philip Golson International Airport. On board was a team of Cuban medical professionals who will be here for an extended period of time, working along with the health personnel from the Ministry of Health. All around the globe, the Cuban government is assisting with the deployment of doctors to assist nations at this time to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. On arrival, the Cubans were met by the Minister of Health, Pablo Marin, and the CEO of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Luann Burns.
We want to have them in Belize City and for the isolation and ICU unit in KHMH. I think that is where we need it most. Around the country, like I spoke to the ambassador from Cuba, we also have brigades here that are working with us. We already know the listing and which specialty they have, and they will be able to be deployed anywhere else in the country that we need them. But this is the first group of 62 medical officers. 32 of them are here, and it feels a relief for all of us, for us to be able to count on Cuba. It's about 2-3 weeks ago that I spoke to the ambassador on what we wanted. Immediately, she sent that request to Cuba, and I really need to give thanks to the President, Miguel Diaz-Canel, because of their constant collaboration with us. It is something that we have been working with them for nearly 38 years. The Cubans are willing to come and support us.
It's 25 years of formal diplomatic relations between us, but we have many more years, 38 in fact, of a history of Cuban medical professionals lending a hand to Belize in goodwill. You saw them come off the plane just now. They were calm. They understand what to do. They are specialists in this area and have experience with Ebola and other epidemics. This is now a pandemic, but it's a good message to us in Belize. Be calm. Practice good hygiene, wash your hands above all. Try to keep the spacing that is hard for us. It's a challenge, but we all need to do it.
What's the timeline looking at? How long will they be staying here?
Well, at the moment, they will be here for about 3 months. But whatever else we need to do, if we need to extend, they already know that they will be willing to extend the time that they will be here.
And apart from their medical expertise, is there anything else that they're bringing to the country, any type of equipment or anything like that?
The equipment, remember, we have the equipment. We will be able to provide whatever they need. One of the things that everybody is thinking about is the protective gear for them not to be able to get the virus. We have that. The kits, the test kits that we need to know if you have the virus, we have that in country. We are about to procure 4,000 more. So all of that we have in place. The ventilators that everybody is talking about, we are getting more.
Cuba has had a medical brigade deployed in Belize comprising doctors and nurses for years now. At the press conference earlier today, Prime Minister Dean Barrow spoke about how important the frontline medical personnel are to the healthcare system to combat COVID-19. Aside from being equipped with personal protective equipment, there's also a welfare package that will be granted to them as a token for compensation.
The first batch of Cubans will arrive this evening. The plane came from Guatemala, stopped in Belize, and then went off to Havana. So by 5, 6 o'clock, that batch should be here. But of course, that brigade joins our frontline personnel who are so very important to us and whom we must salute and thank profusely for all that they have already been doing. I want to make clear that those frontline persons will be taken care of fully and completely insofar as personal protective equipment is concerned, insofar as dealing, first of all, with the workers at the Carl Houston Memorial Hospital, insofar as finding separate quarters for them to live in apart from their family homes while they are on the front lines of the struggle, so that there can be no question of their endangering the welfare of their family members. They will be taken care of with respect to an augmented compensation package to ensure that they can pay for babysitting services, they can pay for other things that they will need as they remain on the front line of this existential combat, and they will, as part of that augmented compensation package, be given additional monies as a token of appreciation for this particularly dangerous but so absolutely vital job of work that they're doing.
The government of Taiwan, another ally of Belize, is also supporting COVID-19 efforts. That country contributed a first donation of $2 million to the government to be used for the purchase of urgently needed medical equipment and materials for the frontline medical service providers in Belize. When we come back, there are now 5 in the race for the UDP leadership. The United Democratic Party postponed its national leadership convention amidst the COVID-19 situation that has been plaguing the world. The deadline for applications is set for March 26th, and at the 11th hour, 2 new applications were submitted. As you know, Patrick Farber and John Saldivar are back in the ring, along with Omar Figueroa. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Pickstock area representative has now submitted his application for the post of party leader, even though he said at the time of the first UDP convention in February that he wasn't vying. The former Belize City Mayor Darrell Bradley will also be contesting the post. Chairman of the UDP Michael Perafit confirmed this information, saying that the deadline for applications still is on Thursday.
Over the last 24 hours, 2 members of the National Assembly have expressed interest in the leadership of the UDP. That's the President of the Senate, Honorable Darrell Bradley, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Wilfred Henrington. Yes, they have both sent in their applications, and they're the 2 latest ones to do so.
So today there are 5 applications?
5 that I'm aware of, yes. Minister Saliva, Minister Farber, Minister Figueroa, and now President Bradley and Minister of Foreign Affairs Wilfred Henrington.
There are provisions in the party's constitution to allow Mr. Bradley to run.
Well, yes, under the party's constitution, anybody who is a member of the National Assembly can put in their name for leader of the party, and of course the National Assembly includes the House of Representatives and the Senate.
Is there any deadline in terms of deadline for that?
Yes, we had made a decision to try and put off the convention for April 6, given our position on COVID-19, but the deadline to apply was never put off. So the deadline is tomorrow, March 26. So they are well within time to apply for leadership of the party.
Darrell Bradley is currently the President of the Senate. He ran as the UDP standard bearer for Caribbean Shores in 2015, but was defeated by the PUP's Karim Musa. Bradley is not a standard bearer and does not represent any constituency. But the UDP Constitution allows anyone from the National Assembly to be eligible for the position. Bradley says he has recognized his challenges, but believes that he is the best option for the party.
This cannot be about individuals and personalities. I made it a point earlier on to mention that it's not even about Darrell Bradley. It's not even about a victory for Darrell Bradley. It's a victory for the party, the United Democratic Party, and the country of Belize.
So allow me to put to you that it is about personalities. It's a political race. You would either vote for the former Belize City Mayor, or the most senior Wilfred Henrington, or the most junior Omar Figueroa, yes, or the most political damage or liable John Saldivar, or the most not like personality in UDP at the moment, Patrick Farber. How do you fare against them, and what are your options?
I don't want to put it in that context. I do agree, Hippolyta, that politics fundamentally is about a candidate and what people feel about a candidate, even irrespective of their particular views and their policies. When persons give a vote, it's really like an emotional kind of thing that they give. I like a candidate or I don't like a candidate. But what I want to do is that I want to make my candidacy about issues.
So let's fast forward to convention day, and let's say that you become the victor on that day. You will need a constituency. Sure. Have you zoomed in into any specific constituencies so far, or any consideration?
I've given some thought about that, but not any specific thought that I would reveal publicly. Their situation. I mean, when one thinks about this, one has to be about 5 moves ahead. So I've kind of thought about situations. I've approached individual people who have offered insight and offered how that could be resolved. But that's an issue which I would admit is a challenge to my candidacy. I would have to, if I were to become the Prime Minister, win a seat. The Prime Minister of Belize, by the laws of Belize, has to come from the House of Representatives. You cannot win, you cannot be the Prime Minister unless that is the case. That's a weakness, and I concede that, but that's something that I would have to recognize, and those who vote for me or those who consider voting for me would have to accept that as well.
Albert Area Representative Tracy Pantan has come under fire from the People's United Party after it came to their attention that relief being offered to constituents appeared to be blatant politicking. The PUP says it is shameful propagandizing during a time of national crisis. Since Monday, Tracy Panton and her Albert Care team have been busy putting together relief packages, which they're distributing to residents in that area. The bags contain ramen noodles, beans, and other items. The initiative was born out of a conversation Panton says she had with her husband, and together they approached family and friends to pool their resources in order to give assistance to those who are affected most by the COVID-19 crisis. The care packages, however, are being handed out in tote bags that bear Panton's campaign slogan, and that has rubbed many the wrong way. This morning, Panton went on record to explain how the initiative came about.
As you know, I was elected to serve this constituency in 2015, and the Albert Care team and I have a team of 6 people, and I have tried to the very best of our ability to serve the community. This is one of the most serious crises that our country has had to face, certainly in my lifetime. I was not around for 31 hurricane or 61 hurricane. And while I know there is a joint oversight committee and that the members of the House have agreed to come together to look at some of the national issues in terms of how we address the threat of COVID-19, I certainly felt that I have a duty and responsibility not only to the country but to this constituency and to the people who have supported me and the people who live in the constituency, whether they support me or not. And so my husband and I and a few of my family's members decided that we would pool our resources together. We all added some money to the kitty, and based on what I was able to raise within my family, I reached out to a few of my friends in the business community. Some of them were able to provide cash donations, and some of them provided goods that they sell in the store. I work very closely with the business community throughout the year for all the activities we have in this constituency, and so we were able to put together what I call care bags to give to 3 sets of people, the elderly, the sick, and the disabled in the first instance. We're then going to assist single parents who have lost their jobs and have children to feed. And then if we have any items left over, and I don't know if we'll be able to go beyond that, we're going to ensure that each household who hasn't been served in those 2 rounds of giveaways would be then at least given a bag of basic food items.
Coming up after the break, PM says the isolation unit to remain at the KHMH.
Made easier with NextGen.
perspective.
The issue of food security in a case of national emergency is paramount. While he alluded to the fact that government is doing everything in its means to ensure that there is sufficient food to go around, Prime Minister Barrow expanded on the matter when pressed about existing initiatives such as the Pantry and Boost programs.
The leader of the opposition was very kind when that matter came up, to put it in a very neutral sort of way, but being as sharp as I am, I certainly understood that he was saying that's too politically contaminated. Not that I agree with him, but because we're operating in a spirit of total partnership, I accepted that the effort to augment those sorts of programs should be confined to the Boost program and supplemented by some new food bank initiative. Certainly, if we reach the point of a total shutdown, we will need for the Human Development Ministry to be able to provide food packages which the security forces would then be able to distribute. But we think that just as there has been an offer on the part of, I forget which of the IFIs it is, to help us to expand the Boost program, so too we would be able to get funding for the kind of food bank that we will want to operate, particularly in the case of an emergency declaration.
Last week, the Belize Tourism Board laid off a majority of its employees and provided them with compensation packages that should cover the next 4 months. But would they still be eligible to receive relief funds, since they also qualify as unemployed stakeholders in the deflated tourism industry?
The BTB insists that this was a measure it had to take because all their revenues were drying up, but they were, as reported to me, scrupulous in ensuring that those that were laid off were paid the proper severance or severance benefits, so that my understanding, and this is, I'm not quoting from the BTB director, it's not verbatim, but my sense was that in the round, those people being laid off, or in the majority of cases, their separation package was such that it would see them through for at least 3 months. So if such persons apply, because as Dr. Barnett told you, they would have to be screened by her and by Chris with the assistance of the BTB. The very BTB would be able to say, but Lord man, so-and-so can't qualify because so-and-so has received the equivalent of 3 or 4 months' wages.
Prime Minister Dean Barrow, during a press conference today, confirmed to the country that frontline healthcare workers that the isolation unit will remain inside the walls of the Carl Hischer Memorial Hospital. The KHMHA Workers Union expressed concerns that having the isolation at the National Referral Hospital is not only putting frontline healthcare workers at risk, but also the hospital. Prime Minister Dean Barrow says that the PAHO report indicates that the unit is properly placed.
The last report I had from the Ministry of Health team is that PAHO has cleared that unit as being properly the place for critical care, with perhaps one reservation as to something that needs to be addressed. When we met with doctors Musa and Koi this morning, there was not, as I understood it, any suggestion that the KHMH can't serve as the critical care unit of last resort. So I know that the hospital workers had, and no doubt still have, their reservation, but as I understand it, the intention is to proceed with the KHMH as the critical care unit of last resort.
A private medical facility plans not to accept COVID-19 cases. The folks at the Belize Medical Associates say that they cannot accommodate COVID-19 patients because the facility is not properly equipped to do so. Instead, it is prepared to take on patients with other illnesses as well as emergency services. Here's Dwayne Moody with this report.
A second case of the novel coronavirus has been confirmed. This is 3 days after a 38-year-old woman tested positive for the virus in San Pedro. This has caused the lockdown on La Isla Bonita to extend to a further 30 days. Like some businesses, the Belize Medical Associate says it is not taking any chances and has announced that come March 26th, it will no longer be seeing patients with symptoms and signs of COVID-19.
Using the ministry guidelines, they had asked that we provide 2 separate waiting rooms. One for persons with respiratory syndrome and possibly COVID-19, and one for the other. Our layout here at Belize Medical Associates does not allow for it. We have one common waiting room. We tried all kind of scenarios of what we would do to separate them, put a tent outside, and nothing has worked. And so we came to the decision that we can only attend to one population. It's either the COVID-19 or the non-COVID-19. And so because of the layout we have here, we went and we decided that we're going to not see the people with respiratory syndromes.
According to Dr. Marcelo Coy, since January as the virus began spreading outside of China, the private health facility put in place certain measures to protect its staff and patients.
Our preparation for COVID-19 began actually about a month and a half ago when it began in China. No? We knew it eventually reached Belize. And so we have been doing things in stages. Like up to yesterday, we have a protocol, as you saw, when people come in, we ask them, do you have a cough or cold or fever? And if they have, we give them a mask and we put them in a separate room behind me, which we have cleared out. And then we ask the doctor to see them as urgent as possible so we can get them out of here.
Dr. Coy says that it does not apply to asthma patients and that the pharmacy, imaging, lab, emergency, and hospital departments will continue to function as usual. The institution, however, will not be accepting those suspect cases that satisfy the COVID-19 factors defined by the Ministry of Health. That is, persons with respiratory symptoms, fever, coughing, runny nose, and shortness of breath, and have traveled overseas within the last 14 days, and those who have been diagnosed with the virus. The hospital might, however, take on emergency services from the KHMH.
Healthcare has to be provided. We are providing it. And also the reason we decided on Thursday, because the ministry had said they was going to open up Patria White as a respiratory clinic. So we're not saying we just don't want to see you, but now, you go there for your problems. In terms of, we have said, and we have spoken about it, and we have put in our press release, that at the appropriate time, we are willing to work with patients that Calvish may not be able, I wouldn't say not be able, if they're full with COVID-19 patients that they may need help, we may do their deliveries, we may do their cesareans, we may do their appendix, we don't know. But at that appropriate time, we will speak about that, no?
But is the measure taken to protect the institution's bottom line? After all, it is a private medical facility. It's a business. So is that what is happening, that you're trying to protect your bottom line?
No. What we have said is that when it becomes a real emergency and there are a lot of patients out there and the ministry cannot cope, colleges cannot cope with the normal emergencies, we are willing to help. Because at that point we become one healthcare. That's when the business part goes out. We are here just basically to provide healthcare to the Belizean community. I don't think we have reached that stage.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, Good night.